It was a crisp autumn morning, and the lobby of Crestwood National Bank was bustling with activity. Employees in sharp suits moved briskly behind polished counters, while customers, some impatient and others simply passing time, waited in line. Among them was Christopher, an elderly black man with a weathered face and a kind smile. His neatly pressed suit was simple yet dignified, and he carried a briefcase that looked like it had seen years of use. Christopher walked with a deliberate pace, his cane tapping softly against the marble floors. As Christopher approached the counter, the room seemed to shift slightly. Two employees, Susan and John, both in their mid-30s, exchanged a glance. Their polished demeanor faltered just slightly, and a subtle frown crept onto Susan's face. "Can I help you?" Susan asked. Her tone clipped as Christopher stepped forward. "Yes, young lady," Christopher replied with a polite smile. "I'd like some assistance with my account." John, who was standing nearby, leaned in and whispered something to Susan, barely audible to the other customers. "Another one of those time-wasters," he muttered under his breath. Susan sighed loudly, her impatience visible as she eyed Christopher up and down. "Do you even have an account here?" she asked, her words dripping with condescension. Christopher remained calm, his smile unwavering. "Yes, ma'am, I do. Been a customer here for over 20 years. "Right," Susan replied skeptically. "Well, we'll need to see some ID." Christopher reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, handing over his identification with steady hands. Susan took it and squinted at it, her expression remaining dubious. "You sure this is your account?" John interjected, stepping closer. "We've had some incidents before." Christopher raised an eyebrow, but his voice remained calm. "I'm certain, young man. I've been banking here since before you started working." The subtle insult didn't sit well with John. He scoffed and muttered, "Some people think they can just walk in here and waste our time." Susan, emboldened by John's attitude, pushed the ID back across the counter. "Look, sir, we're very busy today. Maybe you should come back when you're more prepared." Christopher's expression remained composed, though a flicker of disappointment passed through his eyes. "I am prepared," he said softly. "I'd appreciate it if you could check my account." Instead of responding, Susan motioned to a security guard standing near the entrance. The guard, a burly man with a stern face, walked over, his presence adding an unnecessary layer of intimidation. "Is there a problem here?" the guard asked, his voice firm. "No problem," Christopher said evenly. "I'm just trying to access my account." Susan leaned over and whispered something to the guard, who nodded curtly. "Sir, I think it's best if you leave for today," the guard said, gesturing toward the door. Christopher stood still for a moment, his grip tightening slightly on his cane. The room seemed to grow quieter as other customers took notice of the scene. Without raising his voice, Christopher replied, "Are you asking me to leave without resolving my business here?" "Yes," Susan said bluntly. "You're holding up the line." Christopher looked at her for a long moment, his gaze steady but unreadable. Then, with a slight nod, he turned and began to walk toward the exit, his cane tapping softly once again. The door closed behind him, leaving the employees to resume their work, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface.